Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video we are going to talk about how to continue the process of developing your silhouettes even further. In the most recent video we talked about how to take these basic inception ideas and explore them based on the notes that you make on them using the tech flat sample and using varieties of grays or neutrals to color the different types of fabrics. So as you'll see in the board that I've produced using all of those silhouettes, I've kind of grouped them based on basic styles, silhouettes. So are they tops, are they jackets, are they pants? From there I also have included the embroidery or embellishment types that I thought were appropriate for the collection, and I have pinned up samples of the fabrics. So as I'm working and developing these silhouettes, I will get a better understanding of how I will create the collection, what fabrics I'll use, and what silhouettes will be chosen in the end. So in this video in particular, we are going to do similar tasks as we did before, where we're taking a template and we are going to be continuing the development process of those silhouettes. So what you'll need to do this is a smaller tech sample here. This one is just something I pulled off the internet. You can make your own if you know how to use Illustrator, or you can use something like this, which is a lot easier. And with this, making it smaller is really key. So that way you can put multiple types of silhouette explorations on one page, because you're going to do it for each of your silhouettes. So based on what we talked about last time, you can develop this similarly, where we use notes or ideas or things that you found interesting or you think that would be different, or something that you're just really interested in. You can do that. You can base it off of notes, or you can base it off of other things. So for instance, this collection's goal was to be a little bit more ready to wear. So we want to think about the target market segments. So is it couture? Is it ready to wear? Is it, whatever, who knows what, but whatever you're designing, you want to make sure that your silhouettes, as you develop them, cater to that market if that's what you're doing. You could also base these edits that you're making on style type. So, taking one thing that is supposedly a jacket and making it into a top, and then making it into a different type of jacket, or turning it completely different into a skirt. Thinking about how you can transition from one style to another is a way you can approach this. You can also base it on key styles from some contemporary trends. So remember this page here where I've listed all the key trends from fall. And if you're doing what I'm doing, you're going to combine kind of all of these things I'm talking about when you're editing your silhouette. But in this particular setting, you be working specifically with the idea that the trend forecasters give you. So in this case, they're talking about capes and puffers and blazers. And so none of my silhouettes originally will start like a blazer or a puff sleeve, because it wasn't really designed to be that. So in retrospect, you might be thinking, well, what was the point of doing that? But this is just one way you can get it to be more market ready. If your clothing is not meant to be market ready, then obviously you don't have to do that. Another thing that you can do is base it off of some historical information. So you could go and search the web or books. Like I have this magazine here, which is from the 1930s. You could use anything that you have around the house or old clothes to reference any of that, and you could start pulling the details from those as you make the silhouettes. One thing you will want to do when you're working with developing your silhouettes is thinking about the varieties or variations of the elements of a garment. So things like the neckline, the hemline, the collars, the sleeves, the cuffs. You kind of want to play with those and not just do the same thing over and over. And so I see a lot of what I've created in the same neckline or the same sleeve type. So altering that and changing that around every now and again will sort of create a little variety in the collection. And of course, this is not your collection. This is just the process of getting there. So we're just getting all the ideas, all the possibilities out there. So if you remember from my drawing the croquis video, the Nine Heads book that I mentioned that had a wonderful guide to drawing a croquis and the nine head also has other really amazing things other than just really pretty illustrations, but it has an encyclopedia of details, and specifically in chapter 5. So as you can see, these are drawn versions, but these are practical versions of different things. So we've got collars and hoods and dress seams and other types of openings, and all the way, I mean, they have so many different ones, different types of waistlines and pants legs and the way they would drape and hang, all sorts of waistbands, tops, jacket styles. Even when you start to go into the back, it's really important because sometimes, like, my brain only goes to the very standard back, and so it's interesting to look at the variety of backs, and you can combine the elements from these pages. So for instance, if you like this kick pleat here or the hood vent here, you could combine this with something like this binding and do something cool with the waist. So you can take the elements and play with them in that way. So this is a very good tool to use if you're stuck on how to develop a silhouette. So just to illustrate what you would want to do at this stage, I kind of created a few samples in advance so it wouldn't take up the entire video, but I will show you how this all happened the way it did. And so if we look at this, for instance, you can see that I took my grayscale drawing and I have this one was simply just based on varieties of what already existed. So I exaggerated certain things, changed the length of certain things, added a zipper in this case without a placket. And so as you can see, I'm altering, editing small, very minor things to get very different silhouettes, different style lines, different shapes. So in the next sample, I did this cape here, and this is what it originally looked like. And so this can show you how, again, we're just adding a neckline and making it a little bit more narrow and more symmetrical. Doesn't mean you have to like it, doesn't mean you care at all. It just, it's just kind of playing with that original shape, because this can be a little weird for a consumer, but you can imagine how this can become a little bit less dramatic without that asymmetry. And so you're just playing with this specifically as drama. Also in this one, we're playing with this contemporary trend forecasting. So I'm keeping the style lines here, which you can see with all of the zigzags, but I'm changing the actual garment's purpose or function. So in this particular garment here, the overcoat is something that is trending. So I wanted to create a variation of the overcoat based on this drawing. And for the third one here, I see that a blazer is trending. So I'm trying to do my own take of blazers. And again, with the puffer. And so you can tell I'm keeping some variables that are original to me, and then I'm changing some variables that are stereotypical for that specific style of jacket or overcoat. So in the next sample, I have taken a shawl that was very reminiscent of an insect, and I again have lengthened it and kept it pretty similar to what it was. The panels have been a little bit lengthened and are a little bit wider across the body. And again, I'm doing an overcoat version of this, a blazer version of this, and a puffer. And as I'm creating variations, I'm keeping what's important to the design. And in this case, it's the style lines, those curves that came from the garment. And as they get further removed from the original, the concept from where it came from is going to become more subliminal. And so it's less straight in your face that it came from an insect. And with this last example, I took this basic kind of track narrow jacket here and have done variations of sleeves types, variations of yoke lengths, and variations of proportion and line. So I liked the jacket how it was. I didn't necessarily think that it needed to be changed too much because I didn't intend for this to be anything based on the trend forecasting. I liked what it became just from inspiration. So with this one, I'm just playing with functionality. So obviously the original, I like the length, but does it work? I don't know. So I just started playing with sleeves. And then as I realized the length still needed to be longer for the benefit of having something covering your body in the winter. And I also thought the sleeve, when I drew this one, was a little more narrow, didn't work. So I expanded that back out. And as you can see, the proportions are shifting until I got to this one, and I actually really enjoyed the idea of this channel gathered sleeve at the elbow. So with that being said, you can see from those examples how you can play with one thing and create varietals, which is what we're doing essentially. We're creating variations or varietals of one original concept, so we can have a lot to choose from when we get there. So for this next segment, I'm actually going to walk you through one set of 4 drawings of variations of one garment, and then after that I'm going to speed up and do another garment so you can see 2 different applications done on camera, and that way you can get the idea. And I'll walk you through the first one so you can understand why I'm making decisions as I'm making them. So first things first, once you have your thing down, I would recommend using just a regular piece of paper for these, because you want them to be multifunctional and take them off and cut them out and whatnot. So with that being said, you want to fit, I just do 4 because that's what fits on the page, but you could do it based on the size of your croquis. So for this one, we're going to use this top here, which I drew, and this actually was very weird in the beginning, and it's gotten even more ready to wear as I've gone along. And so now I'm going to do this one based on just changing in the variations of what's already there, the existing details and elements. So let's go ahead and do the first one. So just looking at it for starters, I actually really like the neck. So I would continue that neck through this first design because I don't want to change that one. So I like that neckline. One thing that does bother me about this design is the fact that the shoulders are out. So maybe in this version, we will just cap that sleeve off, and instead of having it, you know, where your shoulders are out in the cold, you can have no skin. And because we are covering up that shoulder, I do like the idea of keeping to that keyhole at the front yoke. And I would just maybe play with the length of the top, and so instead of having a little bit closer to the body, let's drop it down to the lower waist and play with the proportions a little bit and make a longer style top. So then that is all we've done, and there is one variety of the garment. So for the next one, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, what if this was sheer at the shoulder and we left that keyhole out? So let's change that around. So I'm going to leave the keyhole out. I'm going to keep the neck because I like this knit neck that it has. And I'm going to create the same shape that we have where the garment is connected here, but I am going to change the way that it's connected by adding transparency. So all this is transparent. And the same can be here. So we'll have a little piece that wraps around, and because this is a flat, you're going to see back through the back of the garment, and the sleeve will be sheer here. And I think I'm going to leave this detail here because I actually don't mind it. And then we're going to drop it a little bit shorter than it was, with a little bit more flare. So that's an interesting take on it, because now we've got some sheer elements to it that we've added based on this transparency to the keyhole. So for this one, I think I want to change this seam line here, and I want to also experiment with the idea of this being gathered and longer based on the streaks that were created. So you can see here the streaks are all up and down. So with that one, I'm gonna do the same. I'm just gonna make the neck a little bit wider and drop it a little bit lower so it has like a double roll. And because I'm imagining this in knit if I'm gonna do some sort of collar like that, but I don't know. And then for this one, I would keep this same concept going, where, you know, it kind of wraps around and then connects over here to the side. Except at this point, at this stage, I would actually maybe gather this right here to make some sort of cascade based on those lines. So then this garment would be sewn flat, and we're gonna remove that seam line since we got so much going on up here, and we're gonna keep that weight. So again, we have a wraparound, and then no keyhole, and then we have this sort of sunburst style shoulder. And these we would see the backs of. And so now you just have these wing-like things that hang off the side, which are kind of cool. And I do think that because it has this, I will keep that segmentation by just adding a seam there. And so for this last one, I think I just want to, I'm going to change the sleeve altogether, go back to the original neckline here where I've got my knit, and maybe I'll mimic that knit down here where the fabric is folding and make it more of a sweatshirt, and put that same sort of band detail at the bottom and up. So it's kind of a narrow fit sweatshirt with a turtleneck, and it's got some volume but not much volume. And then we're gonna kind of create some lines, and this we could do this keyhole now that we have something very kind of smaller. And that's that. That is a set of varietals based on one garment, and everything that I see here came from this. It didn't come up from anywhere else. Even though the sleeve is standard and it's longer, it still has this sort of knit finish to it that it was based off of. So for the next one, I am going to do a pair of pants, and we're going to do them off camera so you can see how that process works. And I'm going to do it based on trend forecast. So according to that trend forecasting page, the slouchy jean and the leather separate is in, and they're not really specifying the cut of it, but they aren't saying necessarily that the leathers need to be small or larger, but they are saying that the jean, the denim, needs to be slouchy. Another very important thing to mention here is that with this specific design, I have an overlaid piece, and the midi is considered on trend, so I might play with that, and I also might combine the elements of a puffer, the gathering quality, and maybe even play with the overlapping of the overcoat. So I'm going to do that right now, and we're going to speed through this so you can see this one get done. so as you just saw, I created 4 different varietals for this pair of trousers that was originally drawn based on my research images. So based on the market research, I played with the idea of the overcoat using a very similar silhouette by expanding that line out, making the leg a little bit wider rather than here where it's a little narrower. You can see the overlap quality that's happening and it's very obvious, but it's not an overcoat, but maybe the overcoat itself doesn't have to be a jacket. Maybe it could be a part of the trouser. The midi skirt is also very popular, and so playing with those wide slouchy leather pants that they're talking about with something over the top of them, and this could be sheer or it doesn't have to be depending on the fabric you have available, and maybe just the idea of something over the top of it, just like we already had, was interesting enough. With this third concept, I played with the idea of just a pair of slouchy jeans, kind of longer, dragging on the floor, almost grungy like, and kept the style lines that were created across this bottom cuff and diagonally across the thigh there. So basically the ideas get put down into the process where you start to develop the concepts. And the first thing that we did was we collaged our research images onto our figures, our croquis figures. And that's a way to start to get the idea started. The very beginning stages is just getting it on the page, which we did. We then would practice what I call redrawing and expanding. And redrawing and expanding is where we just did exactly that. We took the original, we drew it into the page that had the notes, and then from the notes we did this, and then from that we've created varietals. So basically the next thing you do is you would do what's called draping on the stand, and or some people call it 3D experimentation, whatever you want to call it. It's when you take your fabrics or muslin or whatever and you start to use your images or use your drawings or collages or whatever to start to get an idea of what the actual fabric would do on the body. Because again, as a designer of fashion, fabric is your medium, so you need to know how to use it and play with it and drape with it to create what you need. If you're not going to be doing any of the construction part of it, it might just be good to reference images of 3D experiments or drawings of fabric drapery or something that mimics what you're drawing, just to give it some tactile quality. What you then do is take all of your varieties, your originals, your collages, and your 3D experiments, and I have a couple of experiments that I already made and drew out and cut out, so I'll be playing with these later. But just to give you an idea of what that means, like here's a sleeve drape I did, a side drape I did, another sleeve, a front drape. So just different types of studies on the stand that related back to the designs originally created. And once you have those, you will then reach the center part, which is your maximum possible silhouette options. And that's when you get to lay everything out and start to synthesize them together and make sort of decisions about what things you like and what you don't, which will take you down to this little nick mark here. And this is going to be where you're omitting things that you don't like, highlighting things that you do like, and narrowing down the key elements that will build your collection. And remember, we're not talking about what fabrics they'll be made out of. We're not talking about what colors to choose. We're not in illustration mode yet. We are simply just still in our ideation stage. We are coming up with the idea. And from there, you will have a series of concepts that you will then continue to play around with, and for a lack of better words, the best way to think about it is merchandising. So you're going to start to think about the fact, like, that does a top match a pair of pants? Does it go together? Those elements combined look good? Do those products look the same or too different from other ones you've drawn? And so then you start to make minor edits. And that is all testing the cohesion of a collection. Lastly, you'll make your final edits, and then you will solidify that final collection, and you will have a set of styles drawn out that you then can determine what fabrics you want to make them out of or what colors look best, and you can start playing with those concepts. So this is just a little map that I use to remind myself of how the process works and how I move from one stage to the next. And it may seem like a lot because we're just talking about style, but we have to get that down before we can do anything else. So next time we will talk about that 3D experimentation that I showed you and synthesizing what we've already created all together in a giant board, and we will talk about which key elements are more important than others and how to narrow that down. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.